Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Spider-Verse Retrospectives, and today we're going to continue looking at the lead-in materials for Spider-Geddon as we take a look at the Superior Octopus #1. And yeah, as I mentioned on Saturday, today's character is not technically a Spider-Man, but he does follow under the Spider-Man umbrella. Because, well, we're going to be looking back in on Otto Octavius. Now, you may be asking some questions like, what is Otto Octavius doing here? Isn't he dead? Didn't he erase his consciousness so Peter could get his body back? Well, yes and no. So, to kind of explain this, we need to go back to Spider-Verse. So remember how at the end of Spider-Verse, how when Otto got his ass kicked by Peter and he surrendered, but then he told his Anna Maria hologram to go into sleep mode for 100 days? Yeah, it turns out what Otto did was at that time, he wound up creating a backup of his own consciousness and stored it in digital form, and thus, at the end of the Superior Spider-Man comic run, while Peter did have his body back and was officially gone, that copy of Otto's consciousness was alive, and it was transferred into a robotic assistant he had, a robot that he had acquired from the new Sinister Six team, going by the name of the Living Brain, which was actually, believe it or not, an old Spider-Man baddie from like all the way back in his early comics. It's actually pretty cool they brought him back for that. But the point is, for the longest time, Otto's mind stayed within the Living Brain and just kind of operated in the background, just kind of keeping up with its simple servant roles while Peter continued running Parker Industries as the CEO. But the thing is, Otto was always watching, and quite frankly, he did not like how Peter was handling his company, and and he wanted it back. And well, he finally managed to get a chance, as during a storyline called the Clone Conspiracy, he managed to get a clone body made for him, and this clone body was made from genetic material from both himself and Peter Parker. As such, Otto was able to transfer his mind into the clone body, and from there, he became the Superior Octopus, able to reclaim the Doc Ock title, including giving himself new arms, while also getting powers and abilities very similar to that of Peter, since the body was also made from some of his genetic material. As such, as the Superior Octopus, Otto kind of wound up falling back into old habits, as he wound up to during the event comics Secret Empire, he wound up siding with Hydra, and utilizing their resources, he attempted to boot Peter out of Parker Industries and take control of the company back. Of course, Peter wasn't going to let that happen, and so the two clashed, and it ultimately ended with, sadly, Parker Industries being dissolved, which, yeah, I'm not going to deny, I did not, when I heard about that was a plot development from Secret Empire, I didn't like it. I genuinely did not like it. It kind of annoyed me, and it made me mad. But the point was, yeah, it stopped Otto from getting control of Parker Industries, and after the events of Secret Empire, Hydra fell. They lost, and Otto was no longer working with the bad guys. While I have not read Secret Empire, it's on my list, believe it or not. Apparently after that event, Otto did show that despite him now going back to being a villain, some of what Peter taught him was still in here. So he still retains some of the whole great power, great responsibility mantra, as apparently during a crisis, he did end up saving Peter's Aunt May, showing that there was still some good in him. As such, Peter kind of let him go. As such, rather than Peter completely just taking him in, he decided to let him go and kind of wipe the slate clean, so to speak, and just decided, you know what? You did. It's like, you know what? You saved my aunt. I do. So there must be something good in you. I'll let this slide, and so he let Otto go. As such, Otto decided, well, if I failed to do that, I might as well just go back to being a superhero then. And so he wound up moving to San Francisco and decided to turn the Superior Octopus identity into a heroic one rather than a villainous one, which is actually where the Superior Octopus comes into play, as the comic actually opens with the good Doc Ock duking it out with a supervillain group by the name of Night Shift, who is all made up of essentially B-list supervillains. There's this supervillain called Digger, who seems like I don't know. He seems like a well-educated zombie, I think. I don't know. He speaks he speaks fluently and with a great. He speaks very fluently and what he's very well spoken. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm forgetting the words. He speaks the opposite of what I'm doing right now. He makes words good, is what I'm saying. So he's clearly highly intelligent, but he also kind of looks like a brute. I feel, which kind of reminds me of Cave Guy from Freakazoid, but whatever. But aside from him, there's also a supervillain by the name of Dancing Macabre who has the power to hypnotize people with her dancing, and she's normally naked, but they gave her a bodysuit for this. There's the Brothers Grimm, this pair of brothers who have skull motifs, who don't really have anything impressive about them beyond their gimmick. And finally, this other villain by the name of Skane, who has the power to control people's clothes. Okay, but yeah, pretty much what they're doing is that pretty much yeah, this night shift is robbing a group of rich people who are riding on a bus, and of course Doc Ock comes in to start kicking their asses, and because it's Doc Ock, he also has managed to beat them around. Oh yeah, there's one more villain. Sorry, I just remembered there was one more villain, and I completely forgot who it was. I'm sorry. It was, what was his name? Son of a bitch. I'm sorry. The Wax Man. Sorry, I completely forgot that he was there. But yeah, there's a fifth villain by the name of the Wax Man, and he is literally a man made of wax. But either way, yeah, pretty much Otto shows up on the scene and utilizing his intellect and weapons, he's able to just counter each of the night shifter one by one, as he's able to use sonics in his tentacles to take out the Wax Man. His goggles have some kind of preventative measure in him. Because before I go on, I might as well at least show it. This is Otto's costume as the Superior Octopus, and I'll give credit where it's due. I like it. I like how it mixes I love how it's essentially a mix of the Doc Ock and Spider-Man motifs. It's not like the costume looks like something kind of out of Spider-Man, but replacing the red and blue with white and black. The mask kind of looks like a Spider-Man thing, complete with the goggles and so forth. And of course, replacing the Spider motif is an octopus one, as he has green mixed in there. His chest is an octopus on it, and of course he has his standard arms, and in place of web shooters, he shoots ink out of his wrist. It's kind of great. But anyway, I'm getting distracted enough again. Point is, he's able to counter Dancing Macabre's powers because goggles have sensors, and his clothes can't be taken over by Skane because her powers can only work on regular clothes, whereas his are made from unstable molecules. And as for the Brothers Grimm, he just kicks their ass as something fierce. And I forget what he does with Digger. I don't remember. He must have some kind of counter for him. He had counters for everybody, so I really don't know. I guess he didn't do anything to Digger. No, he did not. He just literally sprayed him in the face with ink. My point is this. Otto ends up taking Night Shift down, but rather than just turning them over to the police, he gives them a counteroffer. They can work for him, essentially be his henchmen, so to speak. They will commit no crimes. He will pay them directly, and they will be his eyes and ears out in the city while he's preoccupied. And in return, he won't arrest them. And pretty much he tells them that they can either take this deal or he'll just kick their ass as something fierce. And well, Night Shift really doesn't see a problem with this, so they decide to just take the deal and listen to Doc Ock. As such, he tells them to return all the valuables to the people they robbed. While he goes off to do his own thing, and even Night Shift's like, so what, are we the good guys now or whatever? But yeah. So from here, Otto ends up going back to his base and just kind of does some monologues to himself about his new heroic situation, about various threats, about pretty much just doing everything to pat himself on the back and just doing a good job, just being the best hero you can be. Otto, 10 out of 10 would hero again. But put simply, yeah, it's just Otto monologuing to himself about a situation and talking about how there are some big threats that will require his attention eventually, but in his current state, everything's fine. That they're not going to be a problem. Which I'll talk about that later. But it's a nice bit of foreshadowing. The point is, yeah, his duties as the Superior Octopus are done. So now it's time to get back to his day job. And sure enough, yeah, he didn't just go back to being Otto Octavius. If he came back as Otto Octavius, his life would just pretty much be over. So utilizing his clone body, he wound up setting up a new identity for himself by the name of Professor Elliot Tulliver, and he now works at Horizon University in San Francisco as a teacher, wherein he usually teaches a lot of. Well, hold on a second. Sorry about that. Mind wandered, and there was a dog there. But anyway, pretty much as Elliot Tulliver, Otto ends up teaching about robotics and prosthetics and essentially neural links and so forth. Just basically intelligent stuff that he would probably be mindful of. Though he does try to stay away from any topics that Otto Octavius would have studied to try and not arouse suspicion. There is, however, one problem at working at Horizon University. And that problem's name is Anna Maria Marsoni. So yeah, going back to what I talked about when I looked at the Superior Spider-Man number 32 and 33, yeah, for those that don't know, during the Superior Spider-Man run, Otto had been in a relationship with a woman by the name of Anna Maria Marsoni, and they had gotten in deep and they were truly in love. But unfortunately, the entire time they were together, Otto had to lie about who he was since he was inhabiting the body of Peter Parker. And while Anna Maria and I have not read to the end of the original Superior Spider-Man run. I have read up to, like I said, I read up to a point, but I have not gotten that far. But I've not gotten to the end yet. But yeah, after the events of that comic, Anna Maria did learn about the whole deception, and it didn't sit right with her. And so with Parker Industries dissolved, she now works at Horizon University, and just combined with everything that she had dealt with Otto and Parker Industries, she decided she just wanted to move to San Francisco and get a fresh start. Which, yeah, Otto did not come here for the sake of meeting Anna Maria, it's just coincidence, but seeing her again is no less difficult. She does, of course, not know that Elliot Tolliver is Otto Octavius, and he does not want to let her on about that fact, but the feelings are still there, and when they do end up accidentally running into each other, Otto, while nervous, tries to play it off, but he does see how Anna Maria talks when she mentions being in a toxic relationship, how the person she was with, she didn't really know, even though she thought she did, and Otto is just kind of torn up about it, to the point where once the conversation is over, in his anger, he ends up punching through a screen because he blames himself because, well, he hurt her and he didn't like that. Unfortunately, though, Anna Maria is not stupid, as later on in the day, while Otto's getting lunch, Anna Maria is on her phone and manages to see a news broadcast of the Superior Octopus taking down Night Shift, and she's able to put two and two together and quickly realizes, oh, the hot professor is actually my ex. Shit. I mean, okay, they don't outright say it, but it's clear that's what she thinks. But yeah, with that out of the way, the comic then cuts ahead to that night as Otto continues doing more hero work as he saves people from a collapsing bridge, and while the public and while some of the while the police officers and fire safety they do thank him for his help, they also do question, hey, weren't you working with Hydra that one time? And Otto just kind of brushes it off, saying, oh, I was under mind control, it's no big deal. And they're just like, yeah, that's what I thought, but maybe you should drop the Superior Octopus title. It just kind of just feels a little too Hydra-y, but which does get Otto's go, but he doesn't really get on it, as after he saves the group. As once with his job done, he goes back to his base to try and recoup his losses and to figure out what his next move should be. However, speaking of Hydra, that's the thing. When you're with Hydra, they don't really like resignations. And while Otto is kind of upset that his affiliations with Hydra were brought up at all, he does not want to go work with them again. For him, it was a team up of necessity, nothing more, nothing less, and once his job was done with them, he was just going to throw them to the wind. So, ain't it a coinky-dink with Hydra? It turns out Hydra is right there in his base to greet him. Yeah, they managed to track him down, and Otto ends up walking in to various Hydra soldiers, greeting him, saluting him, and the one in the head is Arnim Zola, who, if you've seen the MCU, it was that computer guy who transferred his consciousness into various computers. Only in the comics, he's a digital mind. He can transfer his consciousness to any computer body, with his face usually in the chest. And yep, they're there to talk to Otto about potentially rebuilding Hydra and figuring out what to do next. Of course, Otto's not happy to find Hydra right there in his home and kindly tells them to fuck off. He wants nothing to do with them. He fulfilled his end of the bargain, and now he doesn't want it, and now he's done. But Zola once again affirms that once you're with Hydra, you can't just leave. The only way to leave Hydra is to die. So Otto says, fine. You want death? I'll give you death. I'll kill you. And so with the shadow of the die is cast, Otto lunges into battle, just knocking Hydra soldiers aside, while Arnim just sits on the sidelines, just kind of mocking him. Pretty much, just basically, and it is a cool fight as Otto's able to fend off each of the grunt soldiers one by one. But as he goes through them, he ends up running into a bigger one. In this case, a supervillain by the name of the Gorgon. Kinda, sorta. It looks like the Gorgon, but it's not the Gorgon, as the original Gorgon is apparently more intelligent and is apparently one of Hydra's big poobah leaders or whatever. This one's actually just a body double, a bio-duplicate, who he has no free will and has no independent thoughts and exists solely for the purposes of taking orders. Although his fighting prowess and skill are still left intact, and so he is still a threat. As such, Otto ends up duking it out with the Gorgon, and while he is a fairly good match, unfortunately, Otto kind of makes a misstep, as in the midst of the battle, he accidentally hits the Gorgon's head, and well, there's a reason why he's called the Gorgon. Like the mythological creature, his eyes turn whoever looks at them to stone, and throughout the whole fight, he had a blindfold on. And when Otto slashed his face, the blindfold came off, allowing him to get a good look at Otto. And sadly, for all of Otto's precautions with dealing with Night Shift, he had nothing to really counter the Gorgon, and so before Otto can blind him again with his ink, he gets turned to stone. As such, Arnim Zolan says, well, shit. I guess, we gave him a shot. It fit. He didn't want to listen, so now he'll just serve as an example for anyone who defies us. As such, the Gorgon ends up destroying Otto's stone form, and of course they go on and try. Of course, Arnim's ready to just go off and find someone else so to find out. Yeah, he's ready to go off and rebuild Hydra somewhere else. As the Gorgon bio duplicate starts giving out the Hydra chant of "Hail Hydra! Cut one head off and two more shall take its place" and all that crap. Before they hear a voice behind them say, "Prove it," and with a quick slice, the Gorgon's head is cut off. And the one who did it was Otto Octavius. Yeah, so what the hell's going on? He was just killed. Why is he here? Which, yeah, even Zola's shocked by this. But Otto promptly does not give him an answer. And while Zola launches an attack, Otto ends up lunging two of his tentacles right into his body and then rips him in half. Although while this does destroy Arnim's body, Otto does tell Zola that he left enough of his signals, that he did open enough channels that he could transfer his consciousness to another body, but he's only doing this because he wants Zola to give a warning that Hydra has to just stay away from him. He wants something to do with them, and if they try to come after him, he will fucking end them. And well, yeah, he wants Zola to be. So yeah, he just wants Zola to be the messenger. So, but yeah, from here we get a bit of exposition from Otto about why he's still alive. And the thing is, the clone body he made, well, to kind of go back to the clone conspiracy, part of the whole deal with the clone conspiracy was that the supervillain known as the Jackal had returned and was offering to give supervillains their own clones of people they loved, or of dead supervillains, and so on and so forth. And well, of course, since it's the Jackal, his work is based off the work of Miles Warren, since that was the Jackal's true identity. Not this specific Jackal, but I'll get to that when we get to later into Spider-Geddon, because trust me, that it's important there. My point is this. While the clones there were efficient, they couldn't really do mind transferal. The only way you could really properly do that is if you cloned a body from someone who was dead. And so likewise, if you made a fresh clone body of someone who's alive, there wouldn't be a mind transferal. It'd just be like a duplicate of your own mind. But there was one bit of cloning tech that did allow for consciousness transferal, and Otto has had first-hand experience with users of that kind of tech. The Inheritors from Spider-Verse. And utilizing his memory of that technology, Otto has managed to duplicate it, creating his own cloning vats similar in function to Genix's cloning vats from Spider-Verse. And so, every time Otto dies, his mind is transferred into a new clone body, effectively making him immortal. And those are the last words that Otto yells in this part of the story, as he tells him that he is now immortal and that none will be able to stop him or stand in his way. It's actually kind of in a way, it's kind of threatening, but also kind of reflective of Otto. So go figure. But yeah, that's not where this comic ends. There is a short backup story in the end, and this one actually does kind of lead more into Spider-Geddon more, as the second story titled Check In actually lets us go back to Loom World with the Web Warriors, and well, the Web Warriors have been busy since we last saw them, as it turns out that since the last time we saw them in Web Warriors number 11, they've been dismantling Loom World bit by bit. To just a reminder, the whole gimmick with Loom World is that it was made up of bit was that is that every part of it was made up of bits and pieces from societies of universes that the Inheritors had conquered. And so with the Inheritors gone and the Web Warriors now living in their home and taking up stock, essentially they've just been undoing all that bit by bit, taking out parts of Loom World and returning them to the universes that they belong, effectively just kind of stripping Loom World down to the bare bones, which I'm sure the Loom World Jessica Drew absolutely loved, since she was made the appointed leader of this place. But whatever, she was a bitch anyway, we don't care about her. Point is, they've now finally managed to get to take Loom World apart, and now all that's really left of it is the Great Hall. Which, yeah, the spiders are now just celebrating. Everything is saved. Loom World's been taken apart, and so they're all partying it up, enjoying themselves, just kind of shooting the shit. Well, almost all of them. Hobie's gone as he's doing his whole thing in Edge of Spider-Geddon #1. But the point is, yeah, everybody is having fun. They're socializing, they're celebrating, and all that shit, and all that jazz. But as the party does die down and people end up going back to their worlds, eventually things do get quieter until eventually all that's left is Billy Braddock and Karn, who are, well, now the only ones left. And, well, there is kind of some tension in the air. Not between Karn and Billy. At this point, they're essentially at this point they're friends. And even in this point, even here, they both talk about how they see the other as essentially their best friend. But yeah, it's kind of hard for both of them in a way. While they do agree that Loom World did need to be taken apart considering how it was built up in the first place, Loom World was also the only home that either of them knew. Karn's home was mostly with the Inheritors, and he was shunned from them like millennia ago, forced to just wander the multiverse until he eventually rebelled against them during Spider-Verse and took on the mantle of the Master Weaver. Loom World essentially, with alongside the Web Warriors, Loom World became his home again. And likewise, Billy, despite the fact that the multiverse was recreated after the events of Secret Wars, still does not, his home is still gone. Earth 833 was one of the worlds that did not come back, and as a result, Loom World was his only home. And so while they both agree that taking down Loom World was the right thing to do, they can't help but somewhat miss it, as for a while it was their home. So I like that. It's a good moment. I do legitimately like it, as it does get some nice, as we do get some nice connection and a nice moment between Billy and Karn, which I dig. It's cool. However, that nice moment is brought to a halt as immediately their computers start getting an alert. And so when Billy and Karn go to check it out, it turns out that there's a signature, there's a signal being broadcast from Earth 616, the main Marvel universe. And when they go to check it out, it's a cloning signal. Specifically, an inheritor cloning signal. What's going on is that something on Earth 616 is requesting genetic templates for building inheritor clone bodies, which immediately causes Billy and Karn to go red alert, like, wait, what? Why is this happening? What's going on? How is it doing this? As such, they begin wondering if the Inheritors if the Inheritors are the ones responsible for this. And while at first they're ready to just say, no, that's not possible, they're on a world without that can't get a signal out, it turns out Karn remembers something, which I'm not going to get too much into detail in it because we'll kind of talk about this when we actually get to Spider-Geddon proper. But yeah, it turns out that the Web Warriors have been unintentionally giving the Inheritors the means of sending out a signal, as they sent spider bots to Earth 3145 to monitor the Inheritors, and one by one, and pretty much the Inheritors have begun stockpiling them. And since the spider bots are supposed to send signals back to Earth 001, i.e. broadcasting signals from across the multiverse, the Inheritors essentially took the spider bots, recalibrated their signals, so now they can send out neural links, so that essentially when the Inheritors die on Earth 3145, their consciousness will be sent to somewhere else if they have the right backup. And wouldn't you know it, they found a facility on Earth 616, and hey, wasn't Otto Octavius building a set of cloning vats? Interesting, is it not? But yeah, the implications are clear. If the This means that the Inheritors have found a way off 3145, and if they manage to get it off, odds are they're going to continue their whole hunt the Spideys across the multiverse, the plan that they had jump-started in Spider-Verse. And so Billy immediately tells Karn, call the Web Warriors back, we need to take care of this now before it becomes a problem, though Karn tells Billy that this is not going to be an easy fight. After all, they only beat the Inheritors by the skin of their teeth last time. If the Inheritors come back, they won't be as easy to take down again. So if they're gonna fight, they might not survive this time. But the comic ends with Billy telling Karn that if he's gonna die fighting, then so be it. He'll do whatever it takes to make sure that another world does not end. So I dig that. It's cool. So yeah, that's my thought. That's the comic. So again, let's talk about both stories. So of course, since the comic is called The Superior Octopus, let's talk about the Superior Octopus section of the book. And I think it's interesting. I know I kind of use that word a lot sometimes, but I do find it to be interesting. At its core, the Superior Octopus feels like the beginning of a run, which in a way makes sense. It's called the Superior Octopus #1 after all. But the thing is, it really does feel like it's setting the groundwork for future stories while still kind of dealing with the fallout from previous stories. It's essentially like closing the book on one side of things while opening another book on this side. Case in point, as I mentioned, when Otto came back and donned the Superior Octopus persona, he had baggage that he joined with the bad guys. He joined with Hydra, and the thing is, part of the plot of Secret Empire was that Hydra took control of the United States. That's kind of a big thing. So, and the thing is, Hydra are Nazis. They are straight up fucking Nazis. So when it comes down to Hydra, allying yourself with them is a big no-no. Bad, very bad. Stay away from that. And so Otto trying to find a way to just kind of brush it off and push it aside, it does feel a little squicky. I'm not going to deny it. I will say this. One of the things that genuinely annoyed me when I heard that they had revived Otto Octavius was the fact that they had tried pushing him back into a villain role, because I liked the Superior Spider-Man, and I mentioned how one of the things that I legitimately liked about the Superior Spider-Man was that Otto was trying to make up for the person that he was genuinely trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. He was actually trying to improve himself, and the ending of that run, I think, helped showcase that, because he willingly let his mind be erased because he knew that if it didn't happen, then that people he loved would be killed, and it would be all his fault. And so he made the ultimate sacrifice for them, allowing himself to be erased so that the real Spider-Man could come back. It's genuinely tragic and is a good zenith, and I think is a good capping point to his character. Unless I think if they had brought Otto back, I feel like they should have at least reflected on that. And the thing is, comics love their status quos. When they have a character set in a specific niche, they like to keep that character in that specific niche. Even if the character tries growing or changing, eventually they're just like, no, let's just put him back in their box. Who cares? We need to appeal to this general audience here. Which, I understand. Again, it's comic books. Comic books need to be as familiar as they can for certain readers, so try to make sure that they can grab them. But the thing is, I like stories that progress the characters, actually have them grow and become their own thing. And the Superior Spider-Man is one of those comic storylines that is very well known. Either you loathe it or you love it, but it's one of those well known. And every time the comic comes back, and every time the Superior Spider-Man gets rebooted, people want to read it. People want to see where it goes. Hell, at the time that I am making this vlog, they are planning to do a third run of the Superior Spider-Man, and you can bet your ass that when I finally catch up reading the other Superior Spider-Man books, I'm gonna get that because I want to read it. Like I said, the Superior Spider-Man is probably one of my favorite incarnations of the web slinger, if not my favorite of all, if not my favorite. So I want to see more of that. Though the problem lies in the fact that they want to keep Otto a bad guy. Hell, during Zeb Wells' Amazing Spider-Man run, they brought Otto back as a villain and just had him be the full bad guy thing or whatever. So I'm sorry. I don't like that. So I find it. So when I heard that they made Otto a bad guy, I was like, oh come on! They hit the reset button. Why? He did. He had a good thing going. He was a good guy. He learned the whole power and responsibility thing. Why? So I admit it feels iffy for me in Superior Octopus. I'm sorry, I went on a whole rant there, but it felt iffy for me at this when they had Otto. They had Otto kind of have to talk about the whole thing with Hydra, because again, that's not really something you can come back from. With that being said, though, it's the same thing that I genuinely liked from the Superior Spider-Man, namely Otto has dark deeds that he has to make up for. There are things in his past that he did that were straight up villainous. In the case with the Superior Octopus, he joined up with Hydra because he wanted to get his company, wanted to get Parker Industries back from Peter, and with Peter dissolving it, that essentially was moot. It was he could no longer get it back, and so I like the idea of Otto essentially deciding, you know what, fine, then I'm just gonna go back to being a superhero, which is again a difficult thing, but it's also Otto Octavius. This dude is arrogance incarnate, and if there's one thing he believes in, it's his own superiority. It's why he called himself the Superior Spider-Man or the Superior Octopus here. So I can understand why he would just try to brush it off, but which again is it's part of the reason why I'm not going to make it a major complaint. It's Otto Octavius. The dude is so full of himself. Of course, he would just brush off any problems that he had and say, well, I'm a good guy now, so what? It doesn't matter what I did in the past. But the thing is, again, like with the Superior Spider-Man, he is genuinely trying to put in the effort to be good, and we see that in the story. Yes, he utilizes certain methods he used when he was a supervillain, like when he starts like when he takes a group of supervillains and turns them into his henchmen to try and patrol San Francisco. In his day-to-day life, he actually tries to make a difference, and above all else, and this is actually one moment that I genuinely loved, he tries to give Anna Maria her space, because in his heart, because ultimately, he still loves her. He does still genuinely care about her, but what he did to her was unforgivable. He lied about who he was, and as a result of that, he did kind of break her heart. And so seeing her now at Horizon University, he knows he has to keep his distance because of how badly he has hurt her. And while you can tell he would love nothing more for them to jumpstart their relationship well, what he did was kind of in a way unforgivable. He can't do it. He can't do that. Even if he wants to, it's not fair to Anna. And ultimately, that's one of the things that I think what I like, that showcases that despite Otto's arrogance and jackass attitude, his heart, he is genuinely trying to put in the effort to do good. And I like that we kind of see that reflected in the story as he tries being that, as while he is still snarky and a jackass, he tries keeping his comments to himself and is putting the effort. And again, it feels a little weird to see, especially since in some cases it does feel a little forced. But at the very least, like with the Superior Spider-Man, I like that they are putting in the effort to try and do that. And I will give credit where it's due. The final battle where Hydra tries to come back in and say, hey, we need to work on rebuilding Hydra, and he pretty much tells them to stuff it. I admit that is kind of satisfying as they try to exert their strength over him and say, oh no one leaves Hydra. You only leave when we kill you. And Otto pretty much going fuck you as he starts beating their asses. It's cool. I like it, and it's cathartic. And by the end, when he outfoxes them with his cloning tech, it is genuinely cool. So I will give credit where it's due. I do like that. I do legitimately like that. So, in a way, I will compliment the comic for this. While it does feel iffy throughout the whole comic about considering how prior to this we saw Otto going back to his more villainous standards, and how in this comic he just kind of tries brushing all that aside and making excuses for it, even talking about how other people were forgiven for their involvement in that, so why shouldn't he? At the very least, it does still reflect what I liked from the Superior Spider-Man. Seeing Otto try to be a good person and make up for his dark deeds of the past, especially for those he's hurt. I legitimately like seeing that, and I like that while Otto is still kind of a jackass, he is genuinely putting in the effort to renounce who he was before. To the point where when Hydra come knocking at his door, rather than making a deal with them, he just starts beating their asses and telling them to get out. I like that. I do like that. It works. It works, and I dig that. On top of that, on top of that, when Otto does come face to face with Anna Maria, you can really feel the hurt in his. You can really feel the hurt as he genuinely does blame himself for what happened, which he deserves to blame. What he did, he did her dirty. He did her dirty, and he deserves to feel that pain. So I do like how they showcase that. And by the end, it really does feel like the whole story with Otto was there to help kind of essentially establish his new status quo, taking what he had before, showcasing that kind of closing the book on what he was before as a villain, and showing him trying to take steps forward to being a hero again, while still showcasing some villainous tendencies. So I like that. It shows it like it's the first, like it's like he has to climb back up those steps of redemption. And I like how they try to kind of build it up here as they set up his circumstances, what he's like in his day-to-day life, who his supporting cast is, what his situation is probably going to be, if this is going to be a continuing book. I do like that. I dig it. It's cool. So on the whole, I do like that. But I will also say this, it does have I will say this, there are still flaws with it. Like I said, it does still feel iffy seeing Otto try and go back to being a hero with his past in mind, and I do mean his recent past, and for the book, with whole secret empire thing. Otto's arrogance does kind of still keep him a little at arm's length about whether or not he truly does mean what he means when it comes to being a hero. And of course, there's going to be one more plot hole that kind of annoyed me. The cloning tech. Yes, Otto did take part in Spider-Verse and was aware that the Inheritors utilized cloning technology in order to preserve their own lives, so that when they died, they could just transfer their minds to a clone body. But here's a kicker. Otto never saw the cloning tech. At all. During the whole of Spider-Verse, he did not bear witness to the cloning tech at all. I have to remind you, the cloning tech was on another unit, was not on Loom World. It was in an entirely different universe that Genix had conquered and then kind of twisted into his own perfect image so that he could use to house all the different cloning facilities for his family. And the thing about that world, Otto never visited it. I don't even know if he even knew about that world's existence. Because the thing is, I don't think he was aware that the Inheritors had a cloning facility in the first place. Because keep in mind when Otto duked it out with the Inheritors, he figured out ways to kill them, but I don't think he fully understood that they would come back. I don't think he ever saw that. And when he did see them come back, he never went to Genix's clone world. He went back. He and his superior spider army were brought back to Earth 13 with the other spider army, and from there on, Otto just kind of stuck by the main spider army. He didn't venture away from him, and the majority of times we saw him in Spider-Verse after that was him butting heads with Peter or thinking of strategies to try and counter the Inheritors. As such, he never really saw anything to do with the cloning tech. In fact, the only Spideys who even saw anything having to do with the Inheritors cloning technology were the alternate universe Ben Reilly, Kane Parker, and Ultimate Jessica Drew. And the thing about those three, they didn't share that technology with anyone, and they wouldn't be in positions to do it afterwards. After all, that version of Ben Reilly died destroying the linchpin of the whole operation. Kaden died shortly after it. Don't worry, he got better, because after all, at the end of Spider-Verse, we saw his hand come out of the cocoon that the other was in. And likewise, Ultimate Jessica Drew is now non-existent since the Ultimate Universe was destroyed in the build-up to Secret Wars. So, yeah, well, not in the build-up, but in Secret Wars proper. My point is this. Otto would not have had any opportunities to see that cloning technology, and no one would have been in a position to tell him afterwards. So I'm just going to say this right now. Otto should not know a thing about the Inheritors cloning tech. I would buy that he could retain his memories from Spider-Verse because of the whole creating a copy of his consciousness during those events. Because after all, after Spider-Verse, when Otto got thrown back into his present day, his mind was wiped of the whole experience because of crossing his own timeline with Peter. But in this, but but again, even if we buy that he could retain those memories, he never saw the inheritor cloning tech. So him recreating the cloning tech or memory should have been impossible, since he would have had no memory to call back from, since he never saw it. I think that's a plot hole, and it does kind of bug me, and it doesn't really make sense when you stop and think about it. So I am going to consider that a flaw. But otherwise, though, the main story with Superior Octopus is fine. It's enjoyable and fine, and like I said, and while it does kind of feel a little iffy, considering considering that everything that happened prior to the comic with all of Secret Empire and on the part Otto played in that, at the very least, I do like that it does still carry the same spirit that the Superior Spider-Man did, with Otto genuinely trying to put in the effort to be a good person, to help others, and actually become a better man than who he was before. I like that, and we see that reflected somewhat here and there, as he tries to keep his distance, actually tries to be respectable, tries to avoid any subjects that he as Otto Octavius would have done in his previous life, and then by the end just telling Hydra to fuck right off when they come knocking at his door. I like that, it's cool, and the rest of the comic does well in establishing the environment that he's in as a superhero, what his situation is in his civilian life, who he's going to be dealing with, the troubles he's going to have to deal with, and the hurdles he may have to cross, and likewise his own strategies as a hero. Which again, I do kind of dig the whole Superior Octopus motif. So again, on the whole, the first story is fine. The first story is fine. It sets a good groundwork, does some good stuff, kind of closes the door on the old and builds way for the new. It still has problems tonally and plot wise, but on the whole, it's not bad. So yeah, I dig it. As for the check-in storyline, that one is a simple, short and sweet comic. There's nothing too big about it, but at its core, it's a nice little emotional ride that it kind of acts as a nice little epilogue to what you'll be expecting from Spider-Geddon. What I like, for one thing, is that it checks back in with the Web Warriors, and what I like is that when it comes to Web Warriors, they do still keep the continuity from those comics, as the Web Warriors we see in Loom World are the Web Warriors that we saw from the previous comics, which includes Octavia Otto, the gender-bent version of Otto Octavius from that reverse universe where everybody's names are reversed, their genders are reversed, and good is evil, and so forth. So I liked doing that, and it's kind of keeping with that continuity. One of the Web Warriors one of the members of the Web Warriors is Hobie Brown, who kind of sort of joined the Web Warriors during the whole Tangled State storyline. So I do kind of like that, and like I said, something that I do legitimately like in the comic is kind of that moment of calm that we get between Billy and Karn, because like I said, the whole crux of the story and the reason why the Web Warriors are celebrating like they are is because they could successfully taken apart Loom World bit by bit, and since Loom World was made up of the bits and pieces of universes and societies that the Inheritors had conquered, essentially that means that Loom World is now kind of gone. All that's left is this grand imperial palace that the Inheritors used to live in, and the only people that live there now are Billy and Karn. So it's tragic in its own regard. So it's kind of tragic in its own way, but at the same time, there's a little bit of softness to that, as Billy and Karn share a moment of friendship, as while they may have lost something true and dear, they at least have each other and the time they spent together. And as a result, they can at least know that while they may be lonely, they can at least be lonely together again as friends. I like that. It's nice. It's nice, and I do like the immediate tone shift, and I do like how it kind of shifts to the immediate bit of tension when you hear about what the Inheritors are doing. Which I'm not going to talk about the whole Spider-Bot thing that's kind of expanded on in Spider-Geddon number 0, which we'll be talking about on Thursday. But ultimately, it is a nice way of doing it, with the final page of the comic being Karn telling Billy, "We're probably not going to survive this time. We only won by the skin of our teeth last time, and they're not going to go as easy on us this time." I do like that. It's a good tone setter for Spider-Geddon, and with everything we saw in Superior Octopus combined with the story, it's a good way of leading into the comic and make you want to see where it goes. So Check In is a nice short sweet comic with some nice emotional bits, some good drama, and some good tension that'll make you want to read the main event proper. So I dig it. So yeah, on the whole, Superior Octopus, fine, sets groundwork, has some problems, but overall can be enjoyable, and Check In is a nice way of leading into Spider-Geddon proper. So I think that's really all I have to say. So, yeah. I thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope to see you on Thursday as we finally take a look at Spider-Geddon. And of course, we'll be doing that as we take a look at Spider-Geddon number 0. Yeah, I'll get to talk. Yeah, I'll explain when we get there. But my point is, I hope to see you on Thursday. Like I said, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, take care.